Welcome everybody to our second webinar of 2025, starting the year strong. We'll just give a minute or two for people to join. As always, in the chat, if you've been on one of our webinars before, we always like to start with a question to find out where you're all dialing in from today, to see how far and wide people are dialing in from today. So just pop in the chat. Oh, Paris, nice. Love Paris. Always good to hear where you're from. Oh, Zurich. We've got an international audience today. Indianapolis.
Oh, really
Do you know
international.
what?
Yeah, this is good.
The psychologist in me is always so intrigued as to why some webinars attract a more of a local UK audience and other webinars are more international. But lovely to see such a wide range of venues, locations coming in today. Very interesting. Having a quick look, see where we've got people dialing in from. Oh, hi, Lindsay. Nice to see you. Or no, you're here. Sunny Southampton. That's good. Bucharest. That's good. Love Bucharest. Leeds. I'm a fan of Leeds. Spending quite a lot of time in Leeds at the moment because my daughter's there at university, so I'm getting to know it quite well. Few US colleagues in today. Fantastic. I'm just going to let you know where I am. Oh, no, that's not. My typing's terrible. That's it. Okay, done. All righty. Well, let's get started with the intros and the welcomes while people are still dialing in. So the wonderful thing about Zoom is it gives my name. So you already all know that I'm Emma Bridger. I'm one of the founders of the EX Space. Joined by colleague Lee today, who's going to be helping me share the findings of the EX report in this webinar. Really
Hi, everyone.
interesting to see how things have changed from last year. There's some interesting movement, isn't there, Lee? So yeah, welcome. So as I said, I'm Emma, founder of People Lab and co-founder of the EX Space, employee engagement and experience experts. We'll talk a little bit more about the EX Space at the end. Lee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, the other founder of the EX Space, 3 decades with a focus on internal communication in the main, but in its broadest sense, culture, change, communication. And then set up the EX Space with Emma a couple of years ago. So really looking forward to getting our teeth into this today. I can't believe it's over a year since our inaugural report, Emma, and really good to see how this sort of fast changing world has moved.
Yeah, absolutely. So as always, please use the chat to ask questions as we go through. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll try and keep an eye on it. And we'll have time for questions at the end. The recording will be shared with you all, and we'll share the slides as well. But more importantly, you'll be able to access the report in full, which goes into a lot more detail than we've got time to go into today. As I said, really interesting seeing how things have shifted from last year. You know, inevitably some things have stayed the same, but there's some interesting movement. I'd love to get your views and thoughts as we go through the report, because I think this is where it's great to really tap into the collective intelligence and experience of you, the audience, practitioners, consultants out there. Would love to hear your views, your insights on why you think we're seeing some of the findings we've pulled out to share with you today, because there are some really interesting I guess not really insights yet, some interesting data. And we've got some hunches as to why we think we're seeing these changes, but would love to hear your views. So please use the chat to share your views and ask questions. Really, really appreciate that. And also, you know, feel free to use the reaction buttons. If you think we're saying something that's really resonating, then, you know, let us know, or not. If you're, you know, if you're looking at the findings we're sharing, thinking, well, that's not my experience at all, we'd love to hear from you. So let's kind of tap into that collective intelligence today. Right, I'm going to get started. I'm going to share the slides. Quite a lot to get through. I'm going to whistle through them quite quickly because I really want to get onto the discussion piece. I'm going to ask Lee to sort of jump in as I go through the slides today. So Lee, I'll just be calling on your wise words as we go through the session today.
Hands on me, no worries.
All righty. So as Lee said, we ran the first EX report sort of last year, the year before that actually, and sort of shared it at the beginning of last year. really about helping us to understand what is going on in the employee experience profession. Lee, some of you may know, ran a consultancy called Gatehouse for many years. Some of you probably come across the State of the Sector in Internal Comms, which is one of your projects, wasn't it, Lee? That's still going strong. Gallagher have picked it up now. It's Gallagher. So you've
Yeah,
got quite.
it's a monster now. Yeah, absolutely huge study, annual study of similar to this, but looking really at the internal comms profession as a specialism, whereas ours is a little bit broader with EX
Yeah.
and engagement in the mix.
Yeah, and likewise at People Lab, we ran a spotlight on employee engagement for many years. So kind of like brought it all together, looking at this kind of broad area of employee experience. Some of it covers, employee engagement, not specifically about internal comms, because I think Gallagher, based on your amazing work that you did originally, Lee, I've got a great sort of the foundation you put in place, already doing a great job when it comes to internal comms. So let's get started. So what did we find? So I'm going to go through a few demographics to start with. Spoke to over 100 organizations, mix of quant and qual as well, and we did some interviews as well. So pretty robust piece of research. Kind of spread across sort of employee base, but 44% have got over 5,000 employees, and not quite 50-50, but we've got a really good showing from both public and private sectors. What's interesting straight away, we asked how many people are working on EX or employee engagement as part of their job description. Pretty similar results to last year, so not a lot of movement there. So you can read those results for yourself. So the majority of teams tend to be in that kind of 0 to 5 people. I don't want to put 0 actually. No, I suppose we did put 0 because some people say there's no one with specific responsibility. So that doesn't make sense. But very similar findings to last year. And 23% said it's kind of owned by everybody, but only 13% the team is structured in the best way to deliver the objectives and plans. So there's some work to do there. And again, as we're going through these findings, any insights you've got, any hunches you've got as to why we're seeing these results. So straight away, one of the questions I've got for you, we're not doing polls or anything today, but if you want to put anything in the chat, why are we only seeing 13% say their team structured in the best way possible? Is it because we don't know how to structure the teams in the right way, or is it because we haven't got yet got the buy-in from above to do things in the right way? We know how we should be structured, but we're just not able to convince the C-suite or senior stakeholders that they need to kind of restructure or move things around. Be interested to know your thoughts on that. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that or any hunches on that finding there, because it's an interesting one that jumps out straight away, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets to the heart of what employee experience is and how it's very different to a specialism like internal communication. That's one part of the overall employee experience. But to do this well, it means interfacing with IT, with facilities, the workplace, the tech, and a whole host of other things. So, can it ever be owned by a particular function? Does it need to be spread across the organization? These are, I think, all challenges that people are grappling with still.
Yeah, definitely. So really interested to hear your thoughts on that. I actually can't see the chat while I'm sharing my slides. It's interesting how Zoom tweak the platform. Every time I go in, things have changed. I used to be able to see the chat. I can't see it now. It's probably me doing something on my end. But Kate, is anything coming out that you think is really useful to share as I'm talking? Feel free to interrupt me.
I will. No, there's nothing.
Put your hand up and interrupt me.
No worries.
Okay. Oh, hang on. Okay. So who took part? So this is really interesting. So we asked where it sits, and we can see a really big swing from last year, and I'm fascinated by this. So last year we heard that almost half of the people that responded to the survey said we've got a function in its own right. So we've got an EX or an engagement function in its own right. That's gone down to 15%. So there's some serious restructuring going on. And maybe that helps explain the finding on the previous slide. Internal comms. So last year, 13% said it's the EX engagement sat in internal comms, only 1% this year. That's fascinating. So again, really interested in your thoughts on why that might be the case. What we're seeing is a big shift towards EX engagement sitting within HR. That's a really significant shift. last year, only a small sort of number there, 6% said it's sat in L&D. This year, nothing in L&D, and the C-suite stayed the same. And other, 21%. So that wasn't there last year. So other is 21%. So really big changes here. And again, really interested in your thoughts on this. My hunch is, I'm not sure this is good news. And I don't, feel free to challenge me on this, but for me, going from a place where we had almost half of respondents saying, yeah, we've got our own function, to this now being part of something else doesn't feel like a move in the right direction. And something that that came across, a phrase I heard the first time reading, I can't remember who the report was from. It's one of the big four talking about trends for this year. They talked about the EX recession. We know budgets are tight. We'll talk about that a bit later. We know that the kind of work that we do is often the first work that's cut when times are tight, when the economic conditions are tough. Is this finding indicative of that? Are you finding that? Would love to hear your views on this. Again, Lee, you got any thoughts on why we might be seeing this big shift here?
I think, if we step back briefly, we've had a really tough year. I think 2024 in particular was a tough year. And for me, that EX recession, if you want to call it that, has felt very real, and it's broader than that. A lot of organizations are really kind of backpedaling on their sort of people focused policies and, becoming much less people friendly, I think, in 24. And we've seen all sorts of things fall out of that, the return to office mandates, job cuts, you name it. So I think there's stuff that's happening on that level, that's just short-term responses to the economy, and short-term changes. And I think, we have to sort of decouple that with the sort of longer-term trend and the overall trajectory here.
And we're certainly seeing quite worrying signals from the world of EDI as well. I know Lee did a blog about this week. We've all seen the news about, Meta massively cutting kind of their focus on EDI, following a lot of the other kind of big brands that are known and loved for really focusing on this. And Leo, I think you've got some thoughts on that as well. And I wonder if that's kind of indicative of companies sort of saying, we're going to cut resource and budget teams in these areas, and clearly that's going to have an impact on EX, right?
I think so. I mean, D&I, wellbeing teams have been cut back, EX teams, IC teams, you name it. The kind of it's a real pulling back of sort of the whole people agenda within organizations in the last 12 months. And yeah, it's definitely had an impact. I think the overall trend is positive, but we've seen a kind of blip this year or last year.
There's a bit of a conversation going on in the chat as well, sharing some thoughts here. So Georgina said, one reason could be senior leaders don't really understand what EX or EE actually is, and HR doesn't understand what it is. How many people and culture managers might there be, but are they just HR business partners? We've also got Philippa said it's about the perception of EX. Savvy organizations understand. It's such a big word, I can barely pronounce it, Philippa. Inexorable link between EX and CX. Adrian has said, I sit in an EX function within an IT team, but it's not a function organizational wide. Another one from Philippa, and the fundamental role of data in driving EX strategies as well. Love has said EEX teams sit in HR under talent and culture. Another comment here, it feels like EX started with a bang, but now the focus is less because of cost savings, much to the point you just made.
Agree with that massively, yeah.
And Stacey, we see it as part of our people strategy led by the people team. Budget wise, we don't want to draw attention to this as it's a separate activity. We don't want the business to see it as separate, but more a refocus on culture and experience. And final comment from Georgia is everything's siloed in most organizations, so they don't seem to join the dots across the teams.
Interesting, yeah. So I think this is definitely something we want to delve into a bit more later this year. We asked respondents, how much time do you spend on doing this stuff? And they spend an average of 64% of their time on EX and engagement activities. But only 19%, and I was quite shocked by this, said their organization had a dedicated strategy. I mean, it wasn't high last year, but it's gone down. I mean, that's again, it's quite surprising to me. So that's interesting as well. So bear that in mind. And some of the comments that you brought out there, I think will really play out in some of the data we'll share with you as we go through the slides here. So professional expertise. So we asked the question slightly differently last year, hence you haven't got a perfect comparison, but I think what we're seeing is a general shift to the right, a general shift towards becoming more of an expert. So over half sort of say I'm in that 4 or 5, so I'm pretty good, or I'm an expert. Third in the middle, and then 15% down the bottom end there. Last year 10% said they were very new to it, 56% developing and learning, etc. So I think we're seeing a general shift towards the right, which is good news. That's some positive signals there, which is great. And this is a new question for this year. So to what extent do your current skills and capabilities set you up for success? So interestingly, that over half say, a 4 or 5, which is very positive, around a third in the middle. So kind of similar to what we saw previously. So this is interesting for me because I'm already sort of questioning, well, if we've got what we need, then why have we got less than 20% saying they've got a strategy? And it might be, there's a really obvious answer to that. It might be that I haven't got the remit or the permission to go work on a strategy. I've got what I need to do, but I've not got the permission or the license to operate to do that. I don't know. Again, really interested in your thoughts on why we're seeing that. So that kind of, there's a little bit of a conflict there in terms of the kind of expertise. So yeah, I'm getting there and I've got what I need, and yet we're not seeing some of that play out, some of the findings that we're seeing in here. For example, teams having a strategy. Lee, have you got any thoughts on this one?
I'll go back to some earlier research we did, Emma, around the EX archetypes. What was that, 18 months or so ago now, looking at the type of roles that exist within EX. And people are wearing multiple hats. It's really, really very embryonic at the moment. And again, some of the comments pointed out, are we, have we even clearly enough defined what EX is, what employee experience entails and encompasses? So I think these things all go hand in hand. It's very early days for the profession. EX in one organization means something very different to another. And there's a lot of variability out there, and I think that plays into the whole skills and capabilities and talent piece.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Budget. So straight away here we're seeing a really big challenge. So over a quarter say they've got less than 10k, which is it's not great. And 36% are having to go and kind of make a business case every time they want to spend any money. So you put those two together, and that's not a very optimistic picture, right? Very few have got really decent budget to kind of to invest in EX and engagement. And then when you look at the bottom line there, only 19% say that allocated budget enables them to deliver the plans. So straight away we're seeing an issue here. So again, work to be done around how we make that case for change, how we convince senior stakeholders that the practice, the people are worth investing in. And it's fascinating to me because the business case is so well established. We hear pretty much every organization talk about, our people are our greatest asset, but it comes to investing in people in terms of the experience they have at work, creating a workplace where people can thrive, creating a place where they can have a great experience. There's something that's not working there, right? So maybe the C-suite are playing lip service to this, sort of talking the talk around our people are our greatest asset. We believe in investing here. The reality is that it's just not the case. And I know from my own experience, a lot of the work we do with People Lab, we have to work really hard with our stakeholders to make that case for change and demonstrate that return on investment. So again, interested in terms of your thoughts on why we're seeing this play out here. Now, this is really interesting for me. So thinking about the professional practice in your organization, so the professional practice of EX in your organization, where is it? So is your organization brand new to it, or is it well established? So we're seeing much more kind of, sort of responses coming towards the left of the scale there. So we're either brand new to it and up to the sort of the number 3, very few scoring 4 or 5. Again, we asked it slightly different last year. And again, I think we're seeing a little bit of shift towards the right. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift towards becoming more well established. But what we're seeing here is a really big gap between individual skills, capabilities, and development. So individuals saying, yeah, you know, I've got what I need to do this. However, we're seeing a lack of investment from the organization in terms of budget, and we're seeing a lack of strategy. We're seeing, you know, a lack here of it being well established. So again, there's a really big gap here, and interested to understand why that is the case, how we can close that gap. So we're saying we've got the people that we need to do this. The professional kind of practitioners are there, they know what they're doing, and yet we're not embedding it. We're not really establishing it in organizations. We haven't got strategy most of the time, 4 times out of 5. And we haven't got the budget we need, and we can't seem to convince whoever we need to convince to invest in this area. So there's a real interesting gap there. And again, we need to focus on how we close that gap if we're going to see any sort of significant change in the coming years.
I think again, and this one probably ties to that point earlier about the lack of a sort of overarching EX strategy or blueprint. You know, from our anecdotal experience over the past 12 months, a lot of organizations that are moving into EX are kind of, and they're experimenting with it, and they're kind of starting with the big moments that matter. They may be overhauling or re-engineering their onboarding process, for instance. That's often a really key starting place for organizations. But it will take time to kind of move that into a much more holistic, joined up, strategic approach to EX, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But certainly the gap is something we need to really focus on, how we start to close that gap. So areas of focus. So we asked what were you looking at, what we're focusing on last 12 months, and what you're going to be focusing on next 12 months. So it's fascinating for me. And again, I won't say disappointing, but our focus is still on this gathering data and insights. So that, I think often we go to that place. We saw that with the engagement industry, right? Engagement was a kind of big, complex concept. And I think my take on that was that practitioners weren't really, they hadn't really got clarity around how to tackle this. And something that was very tangible was to go out and measure it, right? And we saw a whole industry develop around measuring engagement, and really not much investment and support in terms of what you then do with those data and insights. And I really hope that we don't see the same thing happen with EX. And, you know, we have seen quite a drop from last year. 3/4 are saying it's all about gathering data and insights. This year, that's dropped quite significantly. So I think that's a positive signal. I'm a big fan of data and insights. I'm an ex-research psychologist. I love data and insights, but at some point we have to kind of move on to the so what we're going to do with this. Redesigning specific experiences, again, quite a significant drop there. And certainly we've seen that as well. I think a couple of years ago, The World and His Wife was focusing on things like redesigning onboarding, and we're now seeing a broadening of that. Employee voice last year was 63%, culture, values, and internal comms. Internal comms doesn't feature this year. That might be because of the pool of respondents we had, I don't know. But this year we are looking at developing that strategy, which is great news because, you know, it needs to be done. Employee voice has gone from 63% to 48%, and managing change has kind of come into that list there. So that's quite an interesting shift there. So some things are kind of staying the same and some things are a little bit different. When you get the report itself, you'll see a full list of all the different areas in there. So you'll be able to kind of compare and contrast that. So it goes into this in a lot more detail. And we also asked what your challenge is. So last year, the top 5 challenges in order, the top one was line manager capability, then budget, then senior level buy-in, then clarity on our approach and strategy. So we're seeing quite a big shift this year. So the top one, straight to the top of the charts there, is senior level buy-in. That makes sense when we look at what we've seen so far, the lack of investment, the fact that, you know, practitioners are saying it's not embedded. we're not able to get the money we need, we're not able to convince the powers that be. That kind of makes a lot of sense to me. Conflicting priorities has entered the top 5 there. Again, that kind of feels, this tells quite a clear story, I think, in terms of some of the previous stats we've shared with you. The lack of budget, it's a no-brainer. Clarity on approach is still at number 4, and securing resources. So I think the top 5 challenges really sum up the kind of slides we've shared so far. They tell quite a clear story. So we're not able to get that senior buy-in. You know, we've got these different priorities coming at us from every direction, which means we can't get the budget we need. We're still trying to get clear on our approach, and we can't get the resources we need to do the work we need to do. So really clear story there. Lee, any thoughts from you on this slide?
Just to sort of reiterate what you said there, I think a lot of this is cart and horse, isn't it? You know, the starting point is to be really clear on your approach and define what employee experience means for your people and your organization. You build the strategy and the blueprint out from there, and only if you've got that kind of clarity and that strategy and that link to the organization's purpose and its strategy, are you going to win over senior leaders and win the budget. So, you know, a lot of these challenges all go hand in hand. We've clearly got work to do.
Absolutely. So line managers, I'm not going to go into this in lots of detail because it's quite a busy slide. There's lots to sort of take in here, but we asked about line managers, and again, what we've seen is on the left hand side, that's the kind of the positives, if you like. So for example, line managers have a good understanding of our EX plan. So last year was 17%, it's dropped to 14%. If you just eyeball those left hand side figures, they have almost nearly all dropped. Well, what a couple of the same, but you know, 3 have dropped quite significantly. So line managers don't understand our plans as well as they did last year. They're not as bought in, and they don't understand the role they play. Do you have the right skills? This is interesting because only 12% are saying yes, they do. And yet we're not seeing line manager capability as a key challenge for next year. So I'm guessing that's telling me that that we know there's still work to do, but actually we've got to sort out some of the big ticket items before we can start to really focus on line managers. We've got to sort out that buy-in and get budget and get resource and get, you know, get investment to do anything there. And in terms of the negatives, the do not. So again, you'll see that those have kind of mostly gone up. So 55% they don't have, said they don't, line managers don't have the right skills to do this. 42% they said they don't understand the role they play, etc. So it's not a pretty picture. We're seeing a kind of negative movement on this one, which is, I say it's interesting because we also see that line managers, focusing on line managers is not a key area of focus for this year. And it isn't seen as a key challenge. So I think my hunch there is that we've got to sort out the bigger ticket stuff in terms of buy-in and money and structure before we can even begin to focus on this. So it feels like quite a step backwards. So Lee, any thoughts from you on this slide?
Just super depressing. You know, we know from decades of research now that line managers are very much the guardians of everyday employee experience. They're where the rubber hits the road. They're for your teams and individuals sitting inside teams. That is the experience for many of them, and it's the key to unlocking engagement. And we know that. And you know, but it feels like this is just still in the too difficult pile. I think it's also not very sexy. You know, lots of organisations are trying to cut layers of middle management now, and it just is, you know, do you want to go there? I think we need to go there, but it's challenging.
Yeah, and for those of you who are professional and team members of the EX space, check out, we've got a fantastic, if I say so myself, line managers toolkit on there, which does give you everything you need to do some really great work with your line managers. It's tried and tested. It's sort of based on some work that developed with People Lab over the years. We've been using the kind of tools in there probably about 15 years now. So they're tried and tested and they work. And even if you're not pro or team members, we have got some great resources, free blogs, etc., on the essentials level that can help with this. So if there's something you're grappling with, take a look because there are some good resources on there. We'll try and dig some out as follow-up afterwards as well for you. Senior leaders. So again, a similar kind of picture on that left-hand side that sort of talks about the positives. Pretty much, I think every single factor, an even bigger drop this year. So each one of those has gone down. So less likely to understand our plans. They're not bought in. So from 52% to 30%, that is a really significant drop. So again, reinforces that buy-in as a key challenge. 34% to 23% saying they understand the role they play. And for EX, and when it comes to engagement, 45 to 33%. And let's face it, we've been doing engagement for like 15 plus years. So again, that's a pretty depressing stat. And if they have the right skills, 30% to 17%. And again, you know, the figures on the right-hand side of the negatives kind of play out the same story. So we're seeing an increase in all the negatives. So a lot of work to be done when it comes to our senior leaders. Any thoughts, put them in the chat in terms of any success you've had of convincing senior leaders. We can share some views from us, but if you've got any ideas there, or why you think this is such a problem, such a challenge, what is going on with our senior leaders that they are just not getting this? Because as I said, the evidence base, the research, the ROI speaks for itself. It's hard to argue with the evidence. It's really clear in black and white that this area makes a difference. So when you get it right with your people, when you design and deliver great experiences that unlock engagement, you will outperform your competitors. You will, perform better on pretty much every single business outcome you could possibly wish to perform on, be it less accidents, more innovation, better customer service. So why are we seeing these numbers? I was quite shocked by this. Lee, any thoughts from you on this one?
I don't want to keep sounding really depressed, but yeah, it's the same story, isn't it? And it's back to definitions, defining, arguing the business case for employee experience, as you say. It's not that there isn't, there is an absolute wealth of research and data out there, and it's impossible to argue against. We just need to bang the drum much harder, I think, as practitioners and professionals.
Just fascinated by why our senior leaders are so deaf to this. And I know that people on this call will all be really passionate as we are. And I'm sure you're all having conversations. I'm just really fascinated as to why this is so difficult. And we've talked a lot about how EX needs to kind of undertake the same sort of transformational journey that our colleagues in IT undertook, years and years ago when I first started in my first corporate role. The IT team were kind of, often sort of locked in a room. It was a classic IT crowd, if anyone's seen that UK program, often in a basement sort of room, locked away, looking after service. And now, the chief information officer is one of the most important people in that C-suite, and they've undergone a huge transformation in terms of their ability to secure budget, resources, etc. How do we go through that kind of transformation? What needs to change for us to go through that kind of transformation? I don't have the answers. I've got some ideas, but love to hear from you on that. So tools and tech. So last year we asked about what sort of tools and tech are you using to support or inform what you're doing. So what we're seeing here is a drop from the annual survey. Last year 84%, this year 73%. So that's quite significant. So we're seeing again, when you get the full report, you'll see a full list of everything in there. We're just trying to pull out the highlights here. But we're seeing an increase in things like pulse survey and real-time sort of data. Values has dropped as well. That's a big, significant drop. Focus groups and forums has dropped significantly as well. But insights and data has big jump from 26% to 58%. So I think what we're seeing there, my hunch there is because the tech has got cheaper and easier to use, they're able to use insights and data if you're using AI or things like Copilot. Whatever you're using, it's easier to get our hands on real-time stats and data that's actually far more useful than going out once a year with a survey. So I think that's why we're seeing that there. Personas has gone down again, which is disappointing, but I think personas are a great tool to use. Less people using personas. Last year AI didn't feature at all. This year it's not as high as I thought it would be. AI and predictive analysis 18%. So people starting to use that. So that's interesting kind of sort of changes on that one there. And we kind of delved into that a little bit more and so asked the extent to which tech is helping you. So 20% saying not really. 17% don't use it at all. That's quite surprised by that. we don't use any tech to help us when it comes to EX. 20% saying not really helping. 30%, about a third in the middle, and then a third saying yeah, it's helping us. And with AI, this is really interesting. So we asked if you're using it, to what extent is it helping you to use it? So 57% say they don't use it at all. And of those that do, kind of I think most people are kind of in the middle really at the moment using it. So that, again, I think there's a huge opportunity there to use AI to help us improve EX. And again, interested for those of you that are using it, how are you using it? How is it helping you? So I think there's some opportunity there. So a bit more positive on this one. What do you think, Lee? Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's a thing of the moment, isn't it? AI, but a lot of talk and less actual use is the story at the moment, isn't it? But that's about to change, and you know, AI will certainly rock our world of work. It's already happening. It's going to happen. We need to embrace it. And actually, you and I are writing a whole book that's got AI at its heart, which will come out later this year as well. So yeah, exciting things ahead.
Absolutely. Measurement and ROI. So only 35% say they measure the impact of EX. So again, this is interesting for me because going back to that question we had around, have you got the skills and capabilities? People say, yeah, I've got the skills and capabilities. So I'm asking, why then are people not measuring? Again, interested in your thoughts and insights on that. Is it because you don't have the time, or it's not really valued? Is it that you don't know how to do it? So I think there's, again, a little bit of an anomaly there, a bit of a contradiction in terms of, yeah, I've got the skills I need and I'm well developed, but I'm not measuring, I'm not demonstrating ROI here. And I think that's got to be key to unlocking that buy-in, senior buy-in challenge. So 35% say that they measure, and only 15% say they can demonstrate the financial ROI. I know the financials are always tough to demonstrate, but I do think it's achievable. And both Lee and I have got lots of experience and case studies we can share with you in terms of how to do that. And again, load of resources on the EX space to help you to do that. Something we might, Katie, just make a note, might want to pull out some examples there, but I've got some examples of, you know, how you would go about doing that. It is doable. It's not as difficult as people think it is. What's difficult, what's a challenge is, you know, you always get those people sort of saying, yeah, but how can you prove that was down to that EX initiative? And sometimes it's quite straightforward to do that, and other times it's less easy to demonstrate it. But I always say, unless you're working in a scientifically controlled setup where you only change one variable, then you can say that about anything, right? So I think it is doable. Lee, you got any thoughts on this piece?
I totally agree. And again, I think this is something that it's similar. It's interesting to look at the sort of path of internal comms as a profession over the last 2 or 3 decades. It's gone through a very similar thing. You know, we went through a period where we didn't measure. Suddenly measurement became really key. You know, and I think we're probably at that early stage within EX, but it's very doable. And, you know, if we're to be taken seriously and win over senior leaders and get the budget and clout we need to make a difference, we've got to hardwire what we do to the business strategy and prove that it delivers value.
Absolutely. So in terms of how you'd rate the current levels of EX and engagement, that's kind of where we're at. So again, kind of a pretty much sort of standard sort of bell curve in there. So I'm not going to kind of focus on that. Obviously, you know, you'll know where you're at in your organization. You'll know, you know, what needs to be done. I would love to hear from that kind of 9% in that number 5 though, and find out, what are you doing? Let's learn from you. How come you've got exceptional EX and engagement? What are you doing differently? How are you achieving that? But practitioners are optimistic, with 47% saying they believe that it will improve over the next 12 months. So that's a kind of a nice optimistic stat to put in here. It could be better, but it's certainly not as depressing as some of the previous stats we've shared here. So about a third saying it'll stay the same, and 17% saying they think it will decline. So that's not an insignificant number there. So let's hope that we see, you know, that improvement kind of come through the results for next year. So before I go to questions and just kind of conversation, I'm just going to pull out some of the key themes. Now, again, I'll go through these fairly quickly because all the detail is in the report itself. And what I'm not going to do today is go into the so what's this mean? And again, I've done a sort of section within the report that kind of delves into that. So what does this mean? What can we do differently? So no surprises that AI and data-driven practices are up there. So we're starting to see AI and data analytics begin to reshape EX. That kind of, I think that movement from the annual survey is starting to finally see that coming down. I think we're starting to get much cleverer in the way that we can use a lot of the kind of data we already have in the organization to help to do this. And I know that there are some organizations who are being really innovative in using AI to personalize and automate as well. Again, got lots of examples we can share with you in terms of how we're using it with that in our consulting practice, but also what we hear from clients that we work with. There's an optimism around this, but adoption remains limited due to resource constraints and lack of readiness. It can feel quite scary, AI, but it doesn't need to. And for those of you who are using the Microsoft stack, as most corporates do, not everyone, but most do, you know, you've got Copilot, and Copilot, we did a webinar with Silicon Reef towards the end of last year. So I'd say definitely check that out, because we talk about how we can use Copilot to really help supercharge our EX practice. So I think there's a really great opportunity there. We're going to be doing a lot more around that this year. And the focus, interestingly, we're talking about AI, but I genuinely believe that what AI allows us to do is actually become more human-centric, more people first, because it frees up our time to do more of the human side of the EX stuff we need to do. So I'm optimistic about that. Lee, you got any thoughts on this one?
Super optimistic too. And you know, I think in really key areas like line managers, that old chestnut of line managers, and actually, you know, where AI I think can really deliver value is freeing up those folk from all the mundane admin form filling rubbish that they're overloaded with at the moment, so they can actually have the bandwidth to focus on human beings and making the connections between team members and across teams, which is what ultimately they're there to do.
Yeah, I think that's something as simple as, I wasn't going to go to the so what, but just an example, something as simple as like, you know, running focus groups or workshops. I mean, they're very, very time consuming, and they're a really great way to actually, you know, hear firsthand what's going on for your people. And what we can do now, if you've got Copilot or some sort of in-house AI capability, that can really help to, you know, lessen the amount of hours, days, weeks you spend analyzing qualitative data. And also, you know, a lot of people working in internal comms and EX engagement are given the job of going out and running focus groups, but they're not trained research practitioners, right? There's a real art analyzing qualitative outputs. You know, you kind of need to be trained on that. And I think using AI as like an assistant, using Copilot as a Copilot, enables you not to just, you know, leave it all to the AI, but to use them as a kind of second pair of eyes to kind of, you know, really fast track that piece that used to take a really long time. So there's one example of how you can use AI in that way. Leadership buy-in remains critical. We've talked about this already. I'm not going to go into this in loads of detail. So we've got to solve this challenge. We've got to solve this problem if we're going to take this forwards, because until we've got that buy-in, our lives are going to be so difficult, right? So we've got to unlock this. We've got to close that gap. And I've got some ideas on that, what we could do. Having a strategy and measuring and demonstrating ROI, I think will really help. What else can we do? Why are senior leaders so deaf when it comes to this stuff? I don't know what's going on here, and I would love to understand that. So any thoughts from you, let me know. Resource constraints persist. So we know there are, you know, challenges around, you know, the teams, budgets, competing priorities. Often we hear that practitioners are relying on ad hoc funding or sharing resources. And I think, again, coming back to that strategy and buy-in, that will help to unlock this. Because when we get the strategy and the buy-in in place, then surely what follows is we're given that license to operate, to do what needs to be done. So I think that point 2 will kind of unlock point 3. Lee, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, again, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, you know, often often an awful lot can be done through other people's budgets. So, you know, there is a model where the EX practitioner is almost like a minister without portfolio, and you're tapping in and connecting and joining the dots across the organization. You're tapping into the IT budget, the facilities budget to do things. So I don't think you always need to have a big fat chunky budget to make a difference. But when you look at this research in the round, it does paint a picture of, how embryonic this profession is at the moment.
That's a really great point, Lee, and certainly within the work we do at People Lab, we see that time and again, the budget tends to come out of somewhere within the business, like whether it's L&D, whether it's IT, digital comms. There's usually money kicking around, especially on the kind of the tech side, IT, digital side. We see that a lot. So yeah, that's a really good point. Human-centered design is gaining traction. So we're seeing what came out of the free response comments, the qualitative comments, and the interviews we did. We are absolutely seeing a shift towards more human-centered design and people-first approaches, which I think again is it's a nice positive signal to kind of like almost conclude the webinar on. So we're starting to see that, and what we're hearing is that this approach is helping to break down the silos and improve collaboration. So this is a real positive signal, I think. And obviously, all of the tools and resources that we share with you, the training we share on EX Space is about unlocking this and about how we do things in a more people-first, human-centered way. So check out the stuff on there that will help you to do this. And the final theme, no surprises, we're still hearing a lot about hybrid and purpose-driven workplaces. So we're still talking a lot about how to redefine these workplace dynamics. And again, there's not a simple answer here. And once again, the beginning of this year has been kind of we've heard a lot in the news about, return to the office, no more flexibility, no more work from home, or you can work from home but only one day a week. That feels like a massive step backwards. I think those companies that will absolutely outperform are those companies who are really thinking about taking that people first approach, saying what's going to work for our people, what's going to work for the work they do, what's going to work for our organization, where's that sweet spot in the middle. So those are the kind of the key findings. The report itself, if you want to download the report, got a QR code there. The report itself goes into a lot more detail around the sort of stats I've shared today, and there is a lot more kind of narrative around the so what. So what do we do about this? I didn't want to kind of just give it all away on the webinar. I want you to have a look at the report and just really delve into that. What I'm really interested though in the last sort of 10 minutes or so of the webinar, any questions from you in terms of what you've heard so far, and I'll just have a look at the chat as well while we're thinking about questions to see if there's any good ideas and points that have come out, because as I said, I really want to kind of tap into that collective intelligence to start to solve some of these key challenges. So thoughts or questions from you, let me know. I'll stop sharing.
There's a good comment here from Isabel. To close the gap, I think we need to meet senior leaders where they are, meaning showing the value of EX and how it can help meet their company strategy and solving their main challenges with more concrete proposals, to really spelling it out for them.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Thank you for that. Was it Isabel?
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Isabel. Great point. Yeah, meeting them where they are. It's always fascinating to me. And I did, like Lee, 15 years in-house working in comms and engagement and EX. And it's always fascinating how much managing upwards you need to do. And I guess, if I'm honest, back then, my hunch was because the world of work had changed quite a bit, and the people I was managing upwards to kind of came from a very different place. But I haven't seen it change, and it's disappointing for me. So the people that are kind of senior leaders now, I would have hoped and expected would be much more open to what we're talking about here. And we're still seeing the same kinds of pushback that I saw back in the 90s when I first started my corporate career. And I kind of hoped that would change. And I had some ideas about, obviously, very biased opinions, which were wrong, about generational differences, which is why I was seeing some of those kind of challenges. still managing upwards, and I don't know what the answer is, but I'd love to explore that further. So any thoughts on that, let me know. Anyone else got any questions or comments? Got to unmute or pop it in the chat, let me know.
There's another comment here in the chat, from another Emma actually. Do you have a concrete definition of what EX is or should encompass? And is part of the problem that it's not clearly defined, which means that leaders just don't get it?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do have a definition that we use. Don't ask me to quote it because I won't be able to. But that's my menopause. I brain with menopause there, menopause brain. You can find it in the background while I'm speaking, Katie, or Lee can. It's on the EX space, but what we talk about is, employee experience is all about how you make someone feel. It's about emotions. And employees are going to have experiences with you, whether you choose to consciously and intentionally create great experiences and design great experiences or not. They're going to have an experience with you, good, bad, or ugly, right? We differentiate between the kind of the employee experience and the practice of employee experience, which is about kind of what we all do as a profession, if you like. The two are quite different things. However, I am absolutely of the mind that there's never going to be a kind of it's not a psychological concept, right? We're not going to have a definitive definition that's going to be used across everybody in every organization. So I think that what we can do is share with you our definition, how we talk about this. I'll look it up in the book in a minute, in this book. We have a definition that we use, but I would always encourage people to talk to their senior leaders about what works for them, their definition. And when we do training in this area, some organizations will talk about, we just want to create more good days at work, and people go, oh yeah, I get that. Make it very kind of accessible and plain English for senior people. If we create more good days at work, people are going to want to come. They're going to want to come to work. They're going to want to do a better job. They're going to want to stay with us. And we go, oh yeah, I get that. Why would you not want to do that? What possible reason could you have for wanting to create more bad days at work? I don't know, but clearly senior leaders have got a different agenda. So it fascinates me as to how we crack this one. Oh, great. At least pop the link in there.
I'm not sure. I don't know whether that is that open, Katie, or is that locked down for members? I'm not really sure.
Currently it's locked to members. Do you know what? As a little treat, I'll open it up.
Unlock it. That's it.
I'll unlock it for everyone. Give me 2 minutes and I'll unlock it for everybody.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, this was our musings around the whole challenge of defining a kind of such a slippery concept as employee experience. So it's definitely worth a read and includes our kind of definition where we landed as a team on that. But I think the point is back to strategy and clarity of purpose, and every organization's different. Every organization's at a different place on its journey, and there's work to do at the outset of this to really define what EX means for your organization in your context. So I never think there's a sort of one size fits all necessarily. I don't know what you would say on that.
But I think the work that we do when we develop EX strategies with clients, and we've got again, if you are a pro member, the EX Architect course is all about how you develop your blueprint, your strategy. I've never come across a business strategy, a company strategy where focusing on EX would not unlock some of that, right? Because it's always going to be a not just a good thing to do, but a significantly helpful thing to do, to focus on the experience your people have to unlock some of that strategy. So most companies, you can kind of think about any company you work for, work with, whatever, will want to do something around financials. They want to do something around the people. They want to do something around, if you've got customers, whatever it might be, innovation, products, whatever it is. There are only so many kind of buckets that sit in any strategy, and most companies will have there'll be overlap, right? And of all of those, you can see how focusing on EX engagement is going to contribute to delivering some part of that strategy. It's not difficult in my mind to align what we do with achieving the business strategy. So definitely have a think about that, how you align what you're doing to the business strategy and talk in the language of the business. I'm a big fan of that. So it might be you don't even mention the word EX at all. You might not mention employee experience. You might just talk about, it's such a kind of generic term anyway. It doesn't fit. Employee engagement felt very, you know, HR speak, but employee experience, everyone gets that. We all have experiences. We experience stuff every day in our lives. You know, customer experience is very well established. It's it's a much more accessible term. But I think talking the language of your organization and you know, link it and hang it off with whatever your organization is obsessed with or focusing on or wanting to, you know, transform, whatever it might be, hang it off that.
Just to
I
add
think
to that,
sorry,
Lee.
Katie, you go ahead. You go.
I was going to just say, just to add to that, in our fundamentals course as well, we offer loads of different examples of the way different organisations talk about EX and what works for them as well. So that's also on there too. And that blog is working now for everyone.
Thank you, Katie. And I was just going to throw in another amazing piece of work I think that we did, which we published last year, is called the EX Lens. I think it's worth, as part of the follow-up, Katie, for maybe sharing the link to either the webinar or the white paper for the EX Lens. That's a model that that we developed, which really nails down the different dimensions of EX. So really clearly, very, very powerful, an amazing, I think, talking point for conversations with senior leaders to kind of open their eyes to what this thing is.
Yeah, just a quick tip as well. I'm mindful we're almost at time, but one of the most powerful tools I use is the Best Experience tool, which is on the site as well. And I've used this with really senior people to ask them to share their best experience at work. And I always talk about when I did this with the procurement board at Rolls-Royce, so a very, very senior team, started off arms folded. Who is this woman coming to talk to us about this stuff? And they shared stories about their best ever experience at work, and the whole atmosphere in the room changed. You could see people sitting up, there were more smiles. And I think reconnecting senior leaders with how it feels when they have a great experience, because they're also employees, can start to unlock some of that. It's not going to work for everybody, but just thinking about asking them to share their best experience at work, how they felt, why were they performing at their best, how are they able to thrive? You know, they'll go, oh yeah, actually, yeah, I was loads better on my feet when I had a great experience at work. And that can be a really great way of getting them to buy into what we're trying to do as well. The rational stuff for the kind of those that think in that way, and for those that are kind of maybe a little bit more driven by emotions, getting them to share a great experience. And actually the procurement board, and actually every senior leader I've run this with, they get it when they think about their own great experiences at work. They suddenly kind of go, oh yeah, actually it does make a real difference. I was performing, I was loads better. Everybody benefited when I was having a great experience at work. Why would I not want more of that? Why would we not want more of that in our organization? So that can really help to unlock it as well. And that is a tool, Best Experience tool, is also on the site as well. Katie, I think that's a free for everyone tool, isn't it? Just remind me.
I'll double check that. But what I will do is when I send out the recording and the report, I'll pull it together as a bit of an EX report special. So I'll link you to the various tools, and I'll also signpost the things that are available for professional members as well, in case people are interested in that too. So there you go.
Well, I think we're almost at time. So if anyone's got any other questions, let me know.
I jump in with one? That's okay. I'm trying to find the hand gesture, but sorry, I couldn't see it.
Got it. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Hello. It's a great session, guys, by the way. Just firstly, this has been fantastic, and thanks for the resources you've unlocked and shared with us current non-members. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just kind of think like you've dug in really well to kind of the stats from last year and what's coming into this year. I just thought quite a nice question to maybe end with, or see if there's any more after, but there's a big sort of shift towards AI now, and a big focus on human-centered design, which is great. More time with people and in the room with people, or whether it's kind of remotely with people, whatever the case is. Just wondering from you guys, because you just fingers on the pulse, you've been involved with so many different businesses. What are you guys, to end positively, what are you guys most excited about for 2025? And what would you like, or maybe it's something that you're excited about coming up, or what would you like to see from 2025?
Lee, do you want to go first?
You beat me to it. That's a cracking question, Tom. I think, you know, out of all this stuff, a real hobby horse of mine is this line manager piece, because I genuinely think that's where the reality is for so many employees, is that team, that local team that they're part of, and their local leader, and that local leader showing that they care and doing the right thing for them. And I suppose my hope and prayer for this year is that rather than sort of cutting swathes of middle management, and hopefully AI helps facilitate this, we kind of almost revisit and reinvent, reinvigorate that role of line manager, and start thinking about the role that they play from a sort of emotional experience perspective, because they're just so key to this. So I think that's mine. It's a bit of a big one, and a dream and an aspiration, but fingers crossed.
And I've already talked about mine, really. So I am really excited about the potential of AI to enable us to actually become more human-centric and more people-first. So I've mentioned that already. And we've been experimenting with a number of clients actually using kind of design sprint process and approach, and plugging in AI, Copilot and other AI, to really kind of facilitate that and fast track it, and mean we've got more time to do the stuff that AI can't do, and the fun stuff, the people stuff, the getting to know people bit. I think that's really exciting. And I know that a lot of people are starting to play around with AI a little bit more. And I think that, going out sort of fairly soon with a kind of, some products and propositions to help people we work with to do that. And some load of free stuff as well, because we always do lots of free stuff. And also in the internal comms world as well. There's a huge opportunity in internal comms. I think it's hugely exciting. I think it's going to be a real significant change to what we're able to do, because it's going to fast track a lot of the stuff that took a lot of time before. We've got an assistant now to help us, so it means we can do the real work, the work that's really important, the work that no one else can do, the creative stuff, exciting stuff. So thank you for that question. It's a great question. So I think we are at time now, and I think people are just over, people are dropping off. So thank you so much for joining us today. Lots of nice comments coming through. Thanks, really appreciate it. If you're not already a member, sign up. Free membership. The Essentials is free. There's no kind of obligation to buy anything. There's no catch. Just sign up. We want to share the love. And yeah, always good to hear from you. And we've got, when's the next webinar, Katie? Can you remind me? Might put her on the spot there.
I was trying to be clever then and getting the QR code up at the same time in the background. So let me quickly share that, and I'll tell you when the next webinar is at the same time. So the next webinar we have coming up is, oh, it's going to take a moment to open up. If you check out our events page, we've got the full list coming up, but I know we've got one coming up in February with Tree. There we go, Lee. Go on.
We got there. It was painful. No, 5th of Feb. Treehouse Analytics, really practical one, focused on how we, get from kind of counting the beans with surveys to actually driving behaviour change. So any of you that are interested in that measurement, evaluation, listening piece, it's a must dial in for that one.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks. Got me out of a hole there. But the QR code on your screen, that is to join the EX space. And as Emma and Lee both said, that's absolutely free to become an Essentials member. And there's loads of great resources on there, completely free.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're doing, wherever you are in the world. And we hope to see you on a webinar very soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.